Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com.
John Hart is a living history performer who portrays Lieutenant General Winfield Scott with the Confederation of Union Generals. Tell us a little bit about Scott. Who was he?
Well, Winfield Scott was born in 1789. He went on to become the longest-serving general in American history, rose to the rank of three-star general, second only to George Washington. Went into every conflict that the U.S. had from the War of 1812 to the end of the Civil War. He served 14 presidents, ran for president himself as the last candidate of the Whig Party in 1852.
So how do you research a role like Scott?
Well, I read. Constantly read. There's never enough that you can learn about a man like Winfield Scott. He truly was what they called the Great Scott.
Now, part of your performance is you kind of take on his persona. Is there enough information about his personality that you could pick up quirks and other characteristics?
Oh, my Lord. One night we were up in the library, my wife and myself, reading his memoirs. And we got to about the third or fourth chapter, and my wife put the book down, and she said, "Oh, my Lord, John." She said, "You know, Winfield Scott didn't pick you. You didn't pick Winfield Scott. Winfield Scott picked you." And I said, "What do you mean, Maureen?" She said, "Well, arrogant, self-centered, egotistical. I mean, that's you."
So how do you prepare for a performance? How many hours does it take before you actually take on the role?
Well, I've been gifted, ever since my days as a journalist, I've been gifted with a tremendous memory. I can remember, for instance, a song that I sang in kindergarten. Once I absorb something, I'm able to more or less store it up here someplace. And consequently, when I go to speak, it's always extemporaneous. And I'm able to just portray Scott. When I put this uniform on, I become Winfield Scott.
Has your portrayal changed over the years?
No, not necessarily. Winfield Scott, this is a little side story, but when COUG members came to ask me to become their general-in-chief, I sort of laughed. I said, "Well, that would have been Winfield Scott." And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, now, my girth wouldn't have something to do with that, would it?" Because Winfield Scott and I shared the same characteristics, i.e. we were very, very obese. As a matter of fact, we have the same illnesses. So that's how I became into the role of Scott.
When did you first discover living history?
Oh, I was about 5 years old when my father dragged me down to Gettysburg, which is about 3 hours from my home. And he took me to the Pennsylvania Monument to show me my great-great-grandfather's name as a member of Company K of the 17th Pennsylvania Cavalry that served at Oak Hill. From that day on, I think I have been to Gettysburg more at the hand of my father than any other person in history, and probably including those that fought there.
So when you do a performance, when you do a portrayal, what is it that you hope the audience takes away from it?
I hope the audience takes away from it the fact that everything we think about in history isn't necessarily, as they would say, in black and white. For instance, I have been accused of being in charge of what was known as the Trail of Tears. As you know, Andrew Jackson in 1830 passed the Indian Removal Act. And I've been maligned by claiming that it was me, and it was Jackson, actually, and Van Buren after him. I actually befriended John Ross, who was the chief of the Cherokee tribe, and I was able to maintain their setting until like 1838. Finally, Van Buren said, either you're going to do this, what we tell you to do, or you're going to be court-martialed. So I had to do it, but I did it with John Ross. We used John Ross's people to organize and orchestrate the move. I gave them wagons and that for the infirm, the elderly, and the children. I actually went down there to go with John Ross and was ordered back to Washington City.
Well, John Hart is a living history performer who portrays Lieutenant General Winfield Scott with the Confederation of Union Generals. Thank you for speaking with me.
You're welcome, Phil.